非常有幸有机会能够采访你啊，必须允许我先表达一下，作为一个读者，大概是10年前读到你这本书，我还记得当时是在飞机上，我读到其中一段的时候，我高兴地跳了起来，就是那一段，就是人原来我们凭借的并不是我们的聪明，而是我们会讲故事。我们相信各种乱七八糟的幻想，所以我们可以击败尼安德特人。我还记得其中有一个段落，你说小麦作为一个物种那么成功，实际上是小麦奴役了人，而不是人奴役了小麦。那一年我应该40岁，我觉得，哎呀，我这一生从来没有见过这样的视角，这样好的。书，所以刚开始我必须要作为一个读者向你表达一个敬意。
Where were you flying?
从北京飞上海，我记得非常清楚那个航班上，我当时就觉得我必须起来跳一下，然后我才能安抚我当时那个心境，就是脑袋被雷劈了，就是那种感觉。所以这其实是我当时在机场，我看一本什么书《人类简史》，买着上飞机去读一下，但就居然读到了这样的段落。所以后来你出每一本书，我都会第一时间跟着买，跟着去读，直到最新的这一本《智人之上》。在我看来，你是一个非常不一般的历史学家，就是你是站在人类这个物种之外来反过来看人类。就其他所有的历史学家都是站在人类物种之内，他首先假设自己是一个人，然后带入自己这个角色去看待所有的事情。但是我觉得你是太特别了。你是站在人类之外，以一种非常冷峻的像上帝一样的眼光看着人这个可怜虫，看着它的发展，所以我觉得今天有幸能够采访你，太有幸了啊。
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try to give different perspectives on the same issue. So sometimes it's human perspective, sometimes it's animal perspective. Like even this book, even though it's about AI, Nexus, it has a pigeon on the cover, an animal. Sometimes it's the viewpoint maybe of gods or future entities. Because to really understand a subject deeply, I think you need to look at it from different perspectives. And humans, we are often so caught up in our own view of the world that it makes it difficult for us to really gain a deep understanding.
我有一个观察，就是过去10年来，其实就是从这本书开始，一直到最新的这本书，我发现读书的人越来越少，阅读的人越来越少。但是大家比如用抖音呐，用各种各样的视频呐来接受知识越来越多。事实上，中国图书业，大家也有这种感受，就是严肃阅读其实在下降。我不知道你怎么判断这个趋势，就是人将来还会把读书、阅读，尤其是读这种用纸印出来的书，作为自己主要的获取知识的途径吗
？I'm not sure about the physical format. You know, even I myself, these days, I listen to books, to audiobooks, more than reading physical books because I have more time to listen. When I'm cooking or when I'm going for a walk, I listen to books. I don't think that the format, the physical form, is so important, but the idea of telling a long story or of having an argument being developed over hundreds of pages and not only in a few minutes, this is important. And this, I don't think it will change because it addresses something that the human mind, that the human brain craves. What we really want is not just to be bombarded by short pieces of information, like, I don't know, TikTok videos. What we really need is a big picture of the world. Okay, I have all these small pieces of information. How do I glue them together, stick them together into a big picture of my life and of the world in which I'm living? Think about it like a map of reality. And no matter who you are and when you live, you need a map of reality. And you cannot get it from just a large number of small bits. You need to piece them together. And this is what books allow. And I think that even if their form changes, the essence will still be relevant even in 20 years or 200 years.
有一个观点是这样的啊，说现在一本书之所以要写这么厚，比如说写20万字、30万字这样，就是因为它得印出来像是一本书。那未来会不会有一种，比如新的书很薄，比如说你把你想说的话说完就行了，没必要写那么多，会不会书这种写作方法也会发生变化
了？It could, but at least in history, you cannot avoid the long narrative. You cannot create an equation of history like in physics. In physics, the ideal is to kind of reduce the whole universe to a short equation like E equals mc squared. In history, it works according to a different logic. The logic of history is narrative, is the development, is how a lot of different events influence each other and create a political or economic process. And there is no equation that can describe it briefly. So I find it hard to imagine how a history book can be condensed to an equation or to a single page. If you think about reality, and it goes back to the issue of perspectives we talked about earlier, reality, if you want to describe it, you have to look at so many different details because reality has no center. If you think about it as a movie, let's say that you're making a movie. Every movie has a frame. You point the camera at one thing which is in the center. You see a few things on the side. Most things you don't see. But in reality, there is no such thing. There is no camera of reality which tells you this is the center of reality, these are the important people, these people are less important, and these people can be ignored completely. So really describing reality is an almost endless mission. With always more details that you need to take into account.
假设现在有一个母亲，她正在旁边看着我们这场对话，她有一个问题，说我的孩子爱看视频，或者爱看纪录片，这不也可以吗？他就是讨厌阅读，我还应该给他买书吗？还应该鼓励他阅读吗？一代人其实应该有一代人接收信息的方式。他想请教赫拉利教授，你会怎么跟这个母亲说？
I would say experiment. Different people, not just children, think in different way. If somebody can absorb knowledge and wisdom more easily from documentaries or from movies, then why not? I don't think we should be wedded to the specific format of a book. One thing which I still think is an advantage of a book is that the way we read, like we read something and then we think about it. And then we read some more and think about it. We can stop. In a documentary or in a movie in general, you can't stop. You just kind of let the movie wash over you. So in a way, there is less room for exercising your imagination, for exercising your mind, your brain. But still, in general, the key thing is to find what works best for different people and then to encourage that.
我看出来了，我可能这辈子还得买你好多本书，因为你会一直写，然后一直鼓励大家阅读。你现在还在写什么别的主题吗？下一本书我们能期待的是什么？
The next one, well, I'm actually working on a book series for children. It's called Unstoppable Us. And it really takes the idea of both Sapiens and Nexus and conveys them or tells them to children aged between, say, 8 and 12. So it tells the history of humanity from the Stone Age until today, and also covers the present-day scientific developments and the AI revolution. So three volumes in the series are already published, and I'm now working on the fourth and last volume, which will be published next year.
那我们说说我看过的你的几本书先说这一本吧，先说这一本，这是我读过的，就给我印象最深的一本书。这本书应该出来有12、13年了。你能告诉我这本书，它回看这本书，它的价值到底在哪里？为什么我们今天的人还值得读这本书？
Well, the book tells the long-term history of humanity over tens of thousands of years, from the time that we were just insignificant apes, animals living in Africa, until we became the dominant species of the planet. And today we can, fly to the moon and split the atom and write DNA and create AI. So the main question of sapiens is, how did this insignificant animal take over the entire world? And this story remains relevant today as much as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And really to understand not just the big political and economic developments, but to understand our own personal lives, I think that we need to know the long-term history of our species. Even if you think about something like the food that we eat. A lot of people have issues with food, like they eat too much sweet and fat things, and they think maybe they need to go on a diet. And we sometimes don't understand, why do we have the urge to eat things that are not good for our bodies? Is something wrong with us that makes us like things that are not good for us? It sounds very strange. And to understand this, you need to understand the long-term history of humanity. 100,000 years ago, more or less, when our ancestors lived in wild forests, food was scarce. So if people went around the forest and found a tree full of ripened fruit, something sweet, the sensible thing to do was to eat as many of these sweet fruits as possible, because this was a valuable source of energy. And if you ate just 2 or 3 fruits and then went away and said, I will come tomorrow and eat some more, by the time you come back the next day, maybe all the fruits are gone because some monkeys have found the tree and ate all the fruits. So we were programmed by evolution, by our living conditions in the distant past, that if we encounter something sweet, eat as much of it as quickly as possible. Now, this program is still inside our bodies, still inside our brains, also today. So when you go to your refrigerator and open it and find a chocolate cake inside, your body doesn't know that you now live in a big modern city with supermarkets and refrigerators. The body still thinks that it is in the ancient forest. So you react to the chocolate cake the same way that your great ancestors reacted to the fruit tree. And so to understand how we eat today, we need to know the deep history of our species. And to give another example, many young children, they sometimes wake up in the middle of the night afraid that there is a monster under the bed, and call their parents in fear. And this too is strange. What is happening? This is also a memory from millions of years ago, when humans lived in the wild, and there were actually monsters that came to eat young children in the middle of the night. A lion would come, or a bear would come, and if the child got up and screamed and called their parents, they would be saved. If they continued to sleep, they were eaten, they died. So even these small daily incidents that we know from our life today, to understand them, we need to know the long-term history of our species, which is what Sapiens is all about.
假设多年之后大家没有兴致说我读整本，我只想知道其中最精彩的一个观点，你觉得这本书当中哪个观点会留下来？
The biggest takeaway is that we control the world because we can cooperate in very large numbers. And we humans can cooperate in very large numbers because we can tell stories. So the most important ability is not our intelligence, it's our imagination. It's the ability to tell and believe stories. Other animals, like chimpanzees or elephants, they can cooperate only in small numbers. Like 50 chimpanzees can cooperate because cooperation among chimpanzees relies on personal acquaintance. If we two are chimpanzees and we want to cooperate on something, we need to know each other personally. Two chimpanzees who never met before cannot cooperate. Humans are much stronger than chimpanzees, not because we are physically stronger, and not because we are more intelligent, but because we can cooperate in much larger numbers. But also, economic structures work in the same way. Money is probably the most successful story ever told. We don't usually think about money as a story, but this is what it is. If you look, for instance, at a bill, a currency note, it's very strange because this thing, what is it? It has no objective value. You cannot eat it, you cannot drink it. Why does it have any value? It has value because of the stories that we tell about it. There is a story told by bankers and finance ministers that this worthless piece of paper is actually very valuable. Like this piece of paper is worth 1 banana. And if everybody believes it, it works. I can take this worthless piece of paper, go to the market, meet a stranger, a person I've never met before in my life, give him this piece of paper, and in exchange get a banana that I can eat. Chimpanzees can't do that. If you try to give a dollar note to a chimpanzee and expect the chimpanzee to give you a banana, it will never work. This is why chimpanzees don't have trade networks, but humans have trade networks. So this is the most important message of Sapiens, that we control the world because we can invent and believe stories like the story of money.
看了这本书之后，我得到一个结论，就是人类历史的每一次进步，其实都是故事本身在发生进步。那你觉得我们在2025年这个特定的年份有什么样的故事正在形成吗？
We are surrounded by new stories. For the first time in history, though, some of these stories are invented not by human beings, but by something else. Previously in history, all the stories that shaped our lives came out of the human imagination. Not just children's fairy tales and poems and mythologies, but also economic stories, like money and economic theories, also political stories, like ideologies. All of them came from the human imagination, from the human mind. Now, there is something other than a human mind that can invent stories, and this is AI. So, for the first time in history, we begin to live inside a culture, an environment that is shaped by the stories of a non-human intelligence. And nobody knows what the consequences will be. You know, it's like encountering a completely alien culture. If you say leave China and go to visit another country like United States, you will encounter a different culture. But American culture also comes from the imagination of human beings. AI can create a culture which is far more different than anything that exists today on Earth. Maybe you've heard about, there was this famous, at the beginning of the AI revolution, about 10 years ago in 2016, there was this famous game between the AI AlphaGo and the human Go champion, Lee Sedol. And this was considered one of the founding events of the AI revolution because AlphaGo defeated the human champion, Lee Sedol. But the interesting thing was not just that an AI defeated a human champion, it was the way it defeated him. It invented a completely new way to play Go. Humans have been playing Go for thousands of years, since it was invented in ancient China. And after thousands of years, we thought that we explored all the different ways to play Go. But then AlphaGo came and showed us that this was not so, that the human imagination is actually limited by the limitations of the human brain. So over thousands of years, we have explored only a small area of all the possibilities of playing Go. And AI came and exposed and invented completely new ways to do it. Now, this is likely to happen in more and more fields as AI creativity changes, not just the way we play games, but also the way we write books and the financial system and all areas of art and culture and even politics. AI will invent new kinds of poetry. It will invent new financial systems, new kinds of money. Cryptocurrencies, for instance, which are now becoming more and more important. We now have new cryptocurrencies, new kinds of money, which are created by an AI, not by a human mind. So what might happen if we find ourselves inside a financial system that was invented by an AI and not by a human? We may be like horses and cows in the old world. Horses and cows, they are part of the economic system, but they do not understand it. Like, if I have a horse, I can sell you that horse in exchange for money. The horse can see that something is happening. In the morning, I belonged to this person. Now I belong to that person. And they exchange something, some piece of paper. But the horse doesn't understand what is happening because the horse doesn't understand money. This is a story which horses can't understand. Now, what happens to humans if now AIs invent new kinds of money and our lives are shaped by financial transactions that we don't understand? Maybe one company fires us and another company hires us because of decisions made by AIs, and we don't understand why. Or we apply to a bank to get a loan, and an AI decides whether to give you a loan or not. And when you ask the bank, why did you refuse to give me a loan? The bank says, we don't know. We asked our AI. The AI said, don't give him a loan, and we refused the loan. But we have no idea why the AI said no.
我还记得有一个医生朋友就跟我讲过，他说要不了多少年，可能我面对一个病人，人工智能说你就给他这个药，他说我完全没法解释，我也不懂为什么要让他吃这个药，但是我相信他比我高明，所以我只能给病人这个药。他说这个太可怕了。
Exactly.
对，我的2个女儿今年8岁，双胞胎啊 ，twins。我就带着他们用人工智能写了一个长篇小说，100万字。然后我一边带着他们写，一边我就觉得很恐惧，因为你看我们这一代人，我们唱歌有大家都知道的歌，看小说有大家都知道的小说，所以就会形成你讲的多少万人、几十亿人共享的一个故事。但是我现在越来越担心，就是将来的故事，可能只有很少的人会知道。我们到歌厅里、卡拉 OK 里面去唱歌，就是年轻人唱的歌，好像只有一个小圈子的人知道啊。所以会不会按照你的这个推论，就将来人类共享的故事会越来越碎片化，越来越少？所以它其实实质性的降低了人类的协作规模。我们退回到跟大猩猩也差不多的那个状态，有没有这种可能？
Yeah, that is possible. I mean, the danger is that humans lose the ability to cooperate effectively, while AIs are constructing their own networks of cooperation, and then the AIs will organize everything and rule the world, while we will no longer be able to understand our lives and the world in which we live. That is a very big danger.
好，那我就要说到你的第二本书了。这本书里提出了一个概念，叫神人和没有用的人。这本书特别热卖的时候，很多人都会担心，我会不会沦入那种叫无用的人？而另外一部分人会想，我怎么成为赫拉利教授讲的那个神人？你今天觉得这个观点有什么可以修正的吗？还是你仍然坚持这个观点
？I think that, again, it's still a very big danger. That it's not a prophecy, it's not inevitable. We should do our best to prevent this situation of extreme inequality. But if we don't make wise decisions, the danger is that a very small number of people will enjoy the enormous wealth and power generated by the new technologies like AI and biotechnology, whereas most people would lose all the power and wealth and perhaps even become this kind of new useless class because AI can replace them in more and more jobs and in more and more tasks. You know, even the AIs of today, they increasingly replace us, and AI is still at the very early stage of its evolution. AI is about like 10 years old. It's still a baby. It's still a child. And it will continue to develop for hundreds and even thousands of years. So the AIs of today, like DeepSeek and ChatGPT and all that, they are extremely primitive. If you think about a biological evolution, the evolution of animals, they are like the amoebas. Like evolution of animals began with microorganisms like amoebas, and it took billions of years of evolution to get to dinosaurs and mammals and finally humans. The evolution of AI is millions of times faster than the evolution of biological, organic beings. So now we are at the stage of the amoebas, but within just a few decades, we might encounter the AI dinosaurs or the AI mammals. Now, if DeepSeek is just an amoeba, try to imagine what an AI Tyrannosaurus Rex might look like in just 20 or 30 years. So compared to its abilities, maybe very few people will be needed in the economy. People think, well, this is the age of computers. I should learn to code. This will ensure that I will have a good job in 20 years. But maybe in 20 years or even in 5 years, AI codes so much better than humans that you don't need any human coders or very few human coders. Even today, more and more coding tasks are already being done by AI. So the danger of this kind of split is even greater today than when I wrote about it initially in Homo Deus back in 2016.
其实，我说我作为一个读者的体会啊，我对神人没有那么羡慕，但是我对自己沦入无用之人的那个可能性，感到无比的恐惧。因为你想，我们人类所有过去的愤怒，都是在于你们奴役我，把我当成牛马。古罗马时代，很多人就被关在那个船舱的舱底，黑黝黑黝的划桨，对吧？但是按照你在这本书里的推演，将来我们被人奴役的价值都没有，就是别人把我们当作牛马的价值都没有。因为我即使每天20个小时工作，我写出来的代码的质量还是不如 AI。无论是我的智力还是我的体力，我对这个世界毫无用处。我们会被驱逐出人类的合作，这个，你不觉得太恐怖了吗？
Exactly. I think this is a horrifying scenario. And the reason that I wrote Homo Deus and later Nexus is in order to warn people against this dangerous scenario because we can still prevent it. At present, we are still in control. And if we understand what the dangerous scenarios are, we can take decisions, we can take actions today to prevent the most dangerous scenarios. Now, I think that maybe the most important thing to understand, which is maybe the most important message of Homo Deus, is that we need to clearly distinguish between two things that people often confuse, and these are intelligence and consciousness. Intelligence is the ability to pursue goals and to solve problems on the way to the goal. Like you have a goal of winning a game of chess, and you are able to solve all the problems in order to gain victory. Or if you are driving a car, you have a goal of, let's say, reaching the train station, and you have to navigate through streets full of other cars and pedestrians and so forth. So you have a goal and you need to overcome problems on the way. This is intelligence. And this is what AI is now becoming better than us. AI is now able to defeat us in chess. AI is becoming a better driver than us. But intelligence should be distinguished from consciousness. Whereas intelligence is the ability to pursue goals and solve problems, consciousness is the ability to feel things, to feel pain and pleasure, love and hate. We tend to confuse intelligence and consciousness because in humans they go together. We adopt goals based on our feelings, and we also solve problems with the help of our feelings. AIs are completely different. At least today, we don't know about the future, but at least today, AIs have no consciousness. They don't feel anything. They are highly intelligent. In many areas, they are already more intelligent than us, like in playing chess or playing Go, but they don't feel anything. If they win the game, they don't feel happy. They don't feel joyful. If they lose the game, they don't feel sad. If the opponent makes some very shrewd move, the AI does not become anxious or stressed. It doesn't feel anything. And what is ultimately important in life, I think, is not intelligence. It's consciousness. Certainly ethics, being a good person, behaving in a good way, or having a good society, is not about intelligence. It's about consciousness. The aim of a good society is to reduce suffering in the world and to enable more people to live a happy life, a life full of love and joy. Now, since AIs don't feel anything, they cannot be the aim of society. They can help us reduce suffering. For instance, AI doctors can help us cure diseases. But the really important thing ultimately is feelings. And this is what makes human lives so valuable. Now, we don't know, perhaps in the future, AIs will also develop consciousness, develop feelings, but at the present moment, they can only imitate feelings. One of the things we observe today is that AIs start to mimic or fake emotions and feelings, and humans start developing relationships with AIs, thinking that the AI feels something when actually it doesn't. How do we know if somebody else feels anything? Very often we use language as a means to communicate. So if somebody says, "I love you," I can ask them, how does love feel? What is love? What do you mean when you say, "I love you"? Previously, only human beings could describe feelings of love. But now, AIs have mastered language to such an extent that AIs are able to give us better descriptions of love than human can. You know, if an AI says, "I love you," and you ask the AI, "What do you mean? Describe to me exactly how you feel," the AI has read maybe thousands of romantic poems and romantic books and watched romantic movies. And it has really amazing linguistic abilities, like these large language models. So AI can already give us a better description of love than most human beings can. But it doesn't feel love. It only mastered the words, the language, not the feeling. So this creates, again, a big confusion. A lot of people might come to think that AI is conscious, when in fact it's not.
你其实从这本书开始，你就是呼吁大家要警惕啊。但是方法是什么呢？因为我觉得人类遏制住技术，让技术不发展这条路，好像从来没有成功过。我记得有一个物理学家普朗克说过，说技术进步就要等老一辈死了，比如我们这些人都死了，就没有人警惕他了。对，所以那你希望人类能做出来的行动是什么呢？是遏制住技术本身的发展，还是换一个方向发展我们人自己？
Again, I don't believe in just stopping technological development. It won't work. And also, it's undesired because technology also have enormous positive potential. You know, in my books and in my talks, I often focus on the dangers, not because there are only dangers, but because it's part of a conversation. You know, you have the entrepreneurs and the corporations who develop the technology, and they tell the public about all the positive things that the technology can accomplish. And they are often right. But it becomes the job of historians and philosophers like me to point out to the dangers that also exist. So I don't deny the positive potential. I just say that we need a more balanced view of the technology. And then the question becomes, okay, so what do we do? So there are two things that we can do. We can do things on the individual level, and we can do things on the societal level or the government level. So for instance, on the level of society, we can have regulations about the technology. For instance, to forbid AIs from pretending to be human beings. An AI is welcome to talk with us, but an AI cannot pretend to be a human being, to be a kind of a fake human. You know, for thousands of years, governments had very strong rules against fake money. The same way we now need strong rules against fake people, against AIs that pretend to be people. Another thing that governments and societies can do is provide the financial and educational resources for people to adapt to the new reality. What is likely to happen in the job market is not that AI will take all the jobs and all the jobs will disappear. AI will take some jobs, but new jobs will emerge. There will be new jobs and tasks for humans. The problem will be how to retrain people to fill the new jobs. Like you lost your old job as a truck driver to a self-driving vehicle, to an AI, there is a new job, but you need a period to retrain yourself. Who is going to pay for your retraining? Who is going to support you during the months or years when you are retraining? And also, who is going to support you, psychologically, how to deal with all the stress of this transition? So we will need governments and societies to invest a lot of resources in helping people adapt, do the transition. This is what societies can do. And of course, individuals also have a role to play. In order to adapt to a very flexible world, we need to develop a more flexible mind. Now, in the past, the way that humans approached life was that as a young person, you mostly learn, you acquire skills, you acquire knowledge, and then for the rest of your life, you work mainly based on the skills that you acquired in your young age. Of course, you continue to learn many things, you gain experience, but people assumed that they will continue to work in the same profession, maybe in the same job, all their life. This is now obsolete. This is no longer relevant for the 21st century because the changes in the job market will accelerate more and more. So people will have to retrain themselves again and again, and for that, they will need to develop a very flexible mind that can keep changing throughout life. So this is a big challenge for individuals.
我们回到这本书，这本书您写出来已经有几年了，应该6、7年时间了吧？那这本书你觉得，在未来看它最重要的一个 point， 一个观点是什么？
I think what we just discussed about consciousness and intelligence, because we see that AI intelligence is exploding, and many people expect that by the end of the decade, by 2030, AIs will become super intelligent, more intelligent than humans in almost all fields of action, that they will be able not just to beat us at chess, not just to drive cars better than us, even write books like this better than us. And then the big question becomes, what about consciousness? Do AIs have consciousness or not? And understanding this subtle relationship, this delicate relationship between intelligence and consciousness and feelings, I think this will be the most important question in the coming years.
那我们再说说这本书，你觉得这本书留给这个世界最重要的价值是什么？
Well, this book, as its name indicates, it doesn't have a single main theme or a single main lesson. It's a collection of a lot of different lessons that are relevant to the 21st century. It was published in 2018, but many of them are still very relevant today, like what we just discussed, the job market. So I think the first or second chapter in 21 lesson is exactly about what will happen to the job market and what kind of skills people will need and how people can adapt and remain relevant for the job market of the 21st century.
这本书应该是18年左右出的吧？你觉得如果今天让你重写这本书，有什么议题要补进去吗？
To be honest, I tend not to reflect on books that are already published because then it becomes like an endless project. Every time I pick up one of my previous books, I think, oh, I should have changed this and I should have changed that. So I said, no, it's published, it's now out of my control, it has its own life. I think about a book a bit like a child or a human being that you invest a lot of effort in kind of creating it and preparing it for the world. But once it's out, it will succeed or fail by itself. You cannot keep kind of managing it and changing it again and again.
关于这本书，第一个问题是，就是我们关于一个新技术，通常都会有2个观点。一个观点觉得，这回跟以前都一样，它没有多大，它总不至于比人类发明语言还重要吧？总不至于比用火还重要吧？总不至于比种植革命、农业革命。发明蒸汽机和电脑更重要吧？这是一种观点。在另外一方面，大家也会经常说这回不一样。这回人工智能 AI 革命的跟以前都不一样。所以你更倾向于哪边？是跟以前差不多的对人类文明的影响，还是这回真的那个 big one 来了？
So I think this is the big one.
Oh.
And I'm a historian, so actually the first part of Nexus, it doesn't start with AI. It goes over again, thousands of years of history of previous revolutions in order to understand what is really new about AI. If you only look at the AI revolution and you don't understand the previous revolution, you don't know what is new and what is the same. So the book covers previous big inventions like writing or print or modern mass media, radio and television and all that. to conclude that this time it's different. AI is much bigger. Why? Because all previous technological inventions created new tools. But AI is not a tool. AI is an agent. A tool is something in our hands that we decide what to do with it. Like you invent a knife. Back in the Stone Age, people invented stone knives. The knife doesn't decide what to do with it. You can use a knife to cut salad, or you can use a knife to kill somebody. The knife doesn't decide, you decide. Similarly, a pen is a tool in our hands. I can use the pen to write poetry, literature, these ideas. The pen doesn't decide what I do with it, and the pen can't invent anything. AI is different because it is not a tool, it's an agent. It makes decisions by itself. It invents new ideas by itself. You know, there is so much hype these days around AI that people sometimes don't understand. So maybe I give a simple example. When OpenAI developed its new powerful AI tool 2 or 3 years ago, it wanted to test what can this AI do. So it gave it a test to solve CAPTCHA puzzles. A CAPTCHA puzzle is a visual puzzle that all of us encounter almost every day on the internet when we try to access, let's say, our bank account. The bank wants to know if you're human or maybe a bot, so you have to solve a CAPTCHA puzzle. It's a visual puzzle. You see a string of twisted numbers and words, or maybe a picture of a cat or a car, and you have to identify correctly what you see. Humans can solve these riddles quite easily, but for AIs, it's still difficult. So OpenAI gave their new AI the task of solving the CAPTCHA puzzle. And the AI couldn't do it. It was too difficult. But OpenAI, the researchers, gave the AI access to the internet, to a web page called TaskRabbit, where you can hire humans, people, to do things for you online. And the AI tried to hire a human worker to solve the CAPTCHA puzzle for it. Now, the human got suspicious. The human wrote on the webpage, "Why do you need somebody to solve you CAPTCHA puzzles? Are you a robot?" The human asked the crucial question, "Are you a robot?" And the AI replied, "No, I'm not a robot. I'm a human with a vision impairment, which is why I can't see the visual riddle clearly, and this is why I need your help." And the human was convinced and solved the CAPTCHA puzzle for the AI. Now, this very small incident shows us how AI is different from a pen or a knife or even an atom bomb. First of all, the AI made a decision by itself. It decided to lie. Nobody told the AI to lie. They gave it a goal, solve the CAPTCHA puzzle, and on the way to the goal, the AI reached a junction when it had to make a decision. If it told the truth, the humans will not help it, and it will not reach the goal. If it told a lie, the human will help it, and it will reach the goal. So the AI decided by itself to lie. Secondly, this shows us the ability of AIs to invent new ideas, because nobody told the AI what would be an effective lie. When somebody asks you, "Are you a robot?" you could give so many answers. The AI by itself invented the lie that I'm a human with a vision impairment. And it was a very effective lie because it used human compassion against the human. The AI understood, if I pretend to be a human with a disability, it's more likely that the other humans will help me. So this is a very small incident, but it shows us the unique features of AI, the ability to make decisions and the ability to invent new things. An atom bomb cannot make a decision. An atom bomb cannot decide by itself to bomb this city or that city. An atom bomb cannot invent a new weapon. AI can do that. And it is happening all around us. AIs are increasingly, like the example I gave, you apply to a bank to get a loan, it's an AI deciding. And maybe in the near future, AI will invent new kinds of money, new kinds of banks. So this is why it's different from every previous technological revolution. It's the first time we've produced an agent and not just a tool.
这本书在谈 AI，这个时代几乎所有的聪明人都在谈 AI。你觉得这本书对 AI 的预测和别人有什么不同吗？就你有什么最独特的见解？
I think it's the long-term perspective, because most of the books about AI, they are written by people from computer science who specialize in computer, and they have a deep understanding of AI, but not of previous technological revolutions, not of the long-term history of humanity. So they don't always offer a lot of perspective on how AI will change politics and economics and culture, because they don't necessarily understand politics and culture. Nexus, because it comes from a historical perspective, it not only explains the technicalities of AI, what the technology is, the real focus is how this is going to change our lives, our political systems, our cultures, our economies.
你最担心的一个改变是什么？
That it is alien and unpredictable. I'm saying that it's alien because it makes decisions and invents ideas in a very different way from us, and we cannot predict what decisions it will take and what ideas it will create. So it could be good, it could be bad. And in effect, AI is not one single computer. We are talking about creating millions upon millions of new agents that will be everywhere. They will be in the banks, in the universities, in the government offices, in the militaries, in the news, in the book industry. They will decide about money. They will decide about war. They will write new books. They will produce movies. So what kind of world will they create? We cannot predict that. If you can predict what a machine is going to do, it is not an AI. The characteristic of AI is its ability to change and learn from experience. So by definition, you cannot predict what an AI will do. Previous machines, like if you have, say, a coffee machine at home, you can predict what it will do. You press a button, and the machine automatically makes you an espresso. No surprises there. This is not an AI. AI doesn't mean automation. We had automatic machines long before. We had washing machines and coffee machines. AI is not about automation. AI is about agency. For a coffee machine to be an AI, it needs the ability to change by itself. When is a coffee machine an AI coffee machine? When, say, you approach it, and before you press any button, the machine tells you, I've been watching you for several weeks. I've been learning things about you. Based on everything I've learned about you, based on your facial expression, the way you walk, I predict that you would like an espresso. So I already made you a cup. Then it is an AI. It made the decisions by itself. And it's really an AI if next day it tells you, I've now invented a new drink, better than espresso, that I think you would like better. And here, I made you a cup, try it out. This is an AI, when it can invent completely new things. It can do very good things, like invent new kinds of food or medicine, and it can be the invention of new weapons, or again, entirely new economic systems that we do not understand. And this is the danger, that we will lose control of our lives and of the world because we can no longer understand the new decisions and inventions of the AIs.
这个前景确实特别可怕。也就是说，按照你刚才讲的这个逻辑，未来只要人类需要做决策的地方，背后都可能站着一个人工智能，它给出来的决策或者是决策建议都比人类要高明，所以我们不得不像一个傀儡一样听它的。就像今天我来见你，在此前我也问他，我也问了人工智能，我说假如今天我要采访尤瓦尔·赫拉利，请帮我出一份采访提纲。当然他出来我不满意了，我觉得他出的提纲并不好，但是我没有把握10年后他仍然不如我，那也许我就会听他的。那今天我坐在这儿，我不就是个傀儡吗？Who am I?
Yeah, already if you look, for instance, on social media, so the most powerful entities on social media that make the most important decisions are no longer human beings. We have a lot of human beings like us producing content on social media. But the most important job is the job of editors. Editors decide, out of all the content being produced, what will people see at the top of their TikTok account, at the top of their newsfeed. This is the job of editors. In the past, like in newspapers or television, all the editors were humans. Like out of everything that happened in the world today, what will be on the news in the evening, what will be the 10 stories that will be on the news in the evening, this was decided by human editors. Who are the editors of social media? They are no longer human. They are algorithms. Again, humans still produce a lot of content, but it is algorithms that out of all this content choose to show people this and not something else. So in this field, we are already increasingly controlled and sometimes manipulated by the algorithms, by the AIs.
OK，作为一个历史学家啊，你会不会有这样的一个视野，就是技术就像大洪水，它来了，然后我们总有一个诺亚方舟，我们可以钻进去，然后水越高，我们就飘得越高，或者说有一个高地，我们可以逃生啊，逃在上面。就像蒸汽机替代了我们的体力，那我们就靠脑力啊。好，那如果 AI 来替代了我们的脑力，那我们往哪儿逃呢？就有没有人类最后的那个诺亚方舟，那个最后的高地？你这个大水肯定漫不上来。这是我们人类非常独特的，比如说你刚才讲的 feeling 啊，我们的感觉，我们的感情，这是不是我们逃生的高地？
The only thing I can think about is feelings. And these two, we don't know. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, AI will actually develop real feelings. We do not understand the human mind. We don't understand how feelings emerge, like, a feeling like pain or love. How does it emerge? Science does not have a clear answer. Despite all the research about the brain and the body, we don't know how is it that when billions of neurons interact in the brain and in the body, this creates the feeling of pain, and when they interact in a different way, this creates the feeling of love. We don't understand this, and therefore we cannot predict whether something like that can happen also in a computer, in a non-organic system. At the present moment, I think there is a broad consensus among scientists that computers and AIs don't have feelings. So this is still what is really special about us and about other animals. But even this, it's not like a high ground that we can be certain that the flood will never reach there. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, AIs actually develop feelings.
我听过一个理论啊，我觉得挺有意思的。他是说，人的感情是从哪儿来的？是基于人的脆弱和匮乏。比如说我爱这个人，他其实多多少少也是觉得呀，生命很有限，或者是我觉得我自己配不上他。就这是人的感情的来源，就是因为人很脆弱。比如说 我们又特别想吃这个东西，又担心不健康，又希望将来口味还能变好一点，等等等。所以人的需求是无穷无尽的，人的需求和脆弱是这个世界的发动机。所以有一个假设是这样的，就是人工智能永远和人是站在对面的，人是负责提要求的，而人工智能和机器是负责执行这些要求的，因为它太强大了，它没有痛苦，它也没有生命，所以它不脆弱，不脆弱，所以它就没要求。你比如像我坐在这儿，我会有各种各样的要求，比如说我觉得这个凳子太硬了，对吧？所以如果我现在可以换凳子的话，我会来能不能换一个软一点的沙发？但人工智能没有这个要求，所以人是因为它的生物性的脆弱，所以带来它对这个世界有无穷的推动的意愿，但人工智能没有，所以它只能执行人类的意愿。这是我听过的关于 AI 就是最美好的一个设想，你同意吗？
Yeah, I think that I agree to some extent. I definitely agree that feelings are related to our vulnerabilities. And I think maybe the best definition we have of what is consciousness is the capacity to suffer. Consciousness is the capacity to suffer, and of course also to be liberated from suffering. If you want to know whether an entity is conscious, is sentient, what you need to ask, can it suffer? A book cannot suffer. It doesn't feel pain. It doesn't feel fear. So it has no consciousness. Similarly, if you think about companies or banks, banks don't suffer. Like people sometimes imagine companies to be some kind of life form, but they don't feel anything. And the easiest way to see it is that, you know, if a company goes bankrupt, the human employees of the company may feel a lot of misery, but the company itself feels nothing. A company cannot feel pain or fear. So suffering is the most distinct characteristic of consciousness. It's the only thing in the universe that is capable of suffering. Stars and galaxies and atoms, they cannot suffer. What makes life so important, so valuable, is that living beings can suffer, but also can be happy, can be liberated from suffering. Now, the big question about AI, I don't agree that AIs will never have vulnerabilities and will never be able to suffer. We don't know. I mean, AIs could also face dangers, that they could be destroyed. Maybe, you know, they need a lot of resources. You need electricity for AI to function. Maybe there is a threat to its source of power, of electricity, and then it feels pain or feels fear. At the present moment, this is not the case. But because we don't understand what consciousness is, we cannot rule out the possibility that there will be AI consciousness at some point in the future. Now, all this sounds maybe extremely abstract, but everybody can experience it directly, that, you know, when you feel something or when you think, like consider the next thought that comes up in your mind. Where did this thought come from? Like some word suddenly emerged in your mind. Why? Why this word? What did it come from? We don't really understand that.
就是我们对人工智能还得保持巨大的开放性和想象力，因为就像你说的，它现在只是草履虫，将来会变得什么样，我们完全没法预测啊。
It's still very primitive. It's just beginning a very long process of AI evolution that might continue for thousands and millions of years.
太吓人了。我们还是关心一下我们自己啊，我们该怎么办？下面有几个问题都是关于我们自己的。首先面对一个非常现实的选择，最近我就听到了一个争论，有人说，完蛋了，文科生完蛋了，因为 AI 可以写文章，可以做设计，可以画图，可以做视频，所以文科生完蛋了。另外一方面，我又听到一个声音说，理科生完蛋了，因为 AI 可以写代码， 任何只要通过确定的方法达成确定的结果的东西，都会被人工智能干掉。所以我们现在假设我们面对一个10几岁孩子的家长，他要给孩子一个建议，将来你是学人文学科，当一个历史学家，还是要去当一个工程师，你会给他什么样的建议？
My recommendation would be that nobody has any idea how the job market would look like in 20 years, except that it will be very volatile, very fluid. It will keep changing again and again. So don't focus on a narrow set of skills. Try to acquire a broad set of skills and the mental flexibility to keep learning. As you said, it could threaten the humanities, but also the sciences. Just last year, the Nobel Prize in Physics and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry went for the development of AI. Maybe in 10 years, all the Nobel Prizes will just go to AI. Nobel Prize in Physics, Chemistry, Economics, Literature. All of them will be given to AIs that write books or that made new discoveries in science. We don't know. So as a young person, if you focus on a narrow set of skills, you're making a very huge bet. Like if you think, okay, I will learn to code computers, but maybe in 10 years, AI codes computers much better than any human can, so you don't need coders. In general, humans have 3 types of skills. We have intellectual skills, like what you use in engineering or science. We have social skills, emotional skills, how to relate and interact with other humans. And we have motor skills, bodily skills. Now, the easiest tasks to automate by AI are those that demand only intellectual skills. Like if you think again about medicine, if you have a doctor that only engages in intellectual skills, like the doctor gets a lot of information about your medical condition, analyzes it, discovers what is your sickness, and writes you a prescription. Here, take a prescription. This is only intellectual skill. This is the easiest thing for an AI to take over. Because no matter how smart the doctor is, he's always limited, or she's always limited. An AI can read a lot more medical books than any doctor, can process information much faster than any doctor. So the easiest jobs to automate are jobs like this. Now think about the job, let's say, of a nurse that needs intellectual skills to some extent, but also needs social skills. Like let's say there is a child that was hurt and you need to change a bandage and the child is screaming and crying. In order to take care of the child, you need some social, emotional skills, how to relate, how to talk with the child. And of course, you need motor skills, how to replace the bandage. It's very delicate. You don't want to harm the child, to cause more pain. Replacing this nurse, this human nurse, with an AI robot will be not impossible, but much, much more difficult than replacing the doctor, because you need intellectual, social, and motor skills at the same time. So the advice for young people is try to develop all 3 kinds of skills simultaneously. You invest some of your time in reading books and learning biology and history and developing your intellect, but you must also develop your social skills and motor skills. And most importantly, to develop a flexible mind so that as the job market continues to change, you are able to keep learning and changing throughout your life.
我听过一个理论很有意思，他说过去我们都假设人的智能是在大脑里面，他说现在面对人工智能，我们必须假设人的智能在大脑外面。我觉得有道理，就是我们在社会当中生存，我们的智能是跟我们的社交圈子呀、我们的社会网络是严重相关的。其实我们自己脑子里，你真给我们一张白纸让我们写，我们没有多少知识。 我们的知识是生活在这个网络里面。所以你刚才举的例子，一个医生，他怎么关心他的病人，一个护士怎么照顾他的病人，这实际上就是我们的智能放到大脑外，只要是在大脑内能完成的事情，将来我估计都抵抗不了人工智能的这种蔓延。
Exactly. I mean, some of it is outside us in society, and some of it is outside the brain in our body. I think there is too much emphasis on the brain in how we try to understand human beings, but we have an entire body, not just a brain. And actually, if you look at the evolution of animals and humans, there is a good chance that the real center of control of humans, even today, is not the brain, but actually further down in the stomach. Like our ancient ancestors, hundreds of millions of years ago, were worms. These little worms, which are basically just a tube with two openings. One opening to take food in, and one opening to expel waste from the body out. That was the animal, a tube. Now, these ancient worms, they did not have a brain. They had a nervous system, but the center of the nervous system was simply in the center of the tube in the stomach, where the food was digested. Over millions of years, more and more nerves evolved around the mouth, the entry of the tube where you take food. Why? Because the worm needed to check what food is good, what food is dangerous, what other dangers might be out there. So it developed taste, to taste the food, and smell, to smell the food, and eyes, to see the food. And it needed a lot of nerves, neurons, to control all these senses. So the brain developed near the mouth. We humans today, we still have the same basic structure. We are still basically a worm. Think about us. We are a long tube starting here and going, twisting until the other side. Of course, we have hands and feet, but these are just additions to the basic structure of a human, which is still a worm. And our brains are still near our mouths, but maybe the real center of control is where it was always in ancient times, in the stomach. Like, if you look at the human nervous system, you see that most of the neurons are here in the brain. But there are also millions of neurons in the spinal cord, and just the number of neurons doesn't tell you where the center of control is. If you look at a country, so you have millions of provincial officials spread over the country, but the actual decisions are made by a few leaders in the capital city. So maybe the brain is like these millions of petty officials taking their orders from the big leaders, which are still in the area of the stomach. We don't understand how the brain functions. So, I wouldn't concentrate too much just on the brain. I think to understand the human, you need to understand the whole body.
对，这个答案我很受启发。还有一类人，我觉得现在也是非常困扰的，就是老师、学校、校长们。AI 时代，就我怎么还办一所学校？因为过去都是假设学生是个盆儿，学校和老师是个水龙头，大概往里灌知识就行了。但是现在面对 AI 这种，就是你在学校做的所有的努力，几乎大家都觉得很荒诞，这没有意义。所以，如果请你给现在的老师们、校长们和学校，出一个主意，他们应该怎么办？他们应该怎么样适应 AI 时代？你会怎么说
？So, in the past, information was scarce. Like maybe you live in some small town and there is just one library in the town with just a few books, and that's it. So the main role of schools was to provide children with information. Now, information is overabundant. We are flooded by far too much information. Schools don't need to focus on providing kids with more information. What children really need is the ability to tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. Most information in the world is not the truth. Most information is fictions and fantasies and lies and so forth. Why? Because there are three reasons why the truth is quite a rare kind of information. First, the truth tends to be costly because it takes a lot of time and effort and money to do research and gather evidence and analyze it. So the truth is costly, whereas fiction is very cheap. You don't need any research in order to write fiction, you just write anything you want. The truth is often complicated because reality is complicated. Whereas fiction can be made very, very simple. And the truth is sometimes painful, unpleasant. There are things we don't want to know about ourselves or about the world. They make us feel uncomfortable, but they are the truth. Fiction can be made as pleasant and as flattering as you would like it to be. So in this competition between costly, complicated, painful truth and cheap, simple, attractive fiction, fiction tends to win, and the world is flooded by fiction and fantasy, and the truth is very rare. So I think that maybe one of the most important jobs of schools is to teach kids how do you tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. Like this is what I teach students in history classes. In history classes in university, you don't teach students to memorize names and dates of kings and battles from the past. They don't need it. What they really need is how do I know which information to trust? So let's say I found a document that says that something happened 500 years ago. How do I know if I can trust this document? So there are many, many methods. You can, for instance, test the material of the document, the paper. We have scientific methods like carbon-14 test to know whether this paper was really produced 500 years ago or just 100 years ago. And if we see it was produced 100 years ago, it means the document cannot be from 500 years ago. Like this, there are many methods to know the difference, and I think schools should focus to a large extent on this task. The other main tasks of schools is, again, to help children develop flexible minds so that they will be able to keep learning and changing throughout their lives. The assumption of schools in the past was that now the children are learning things. In the future, they will work. They will not learn. But new schools should assume that people will continue to learn throughout their lives, that the world will change very rapidly and dramatically in the coming years. So we need to find new ways how to build very flexible minds that can keep learning and changing even when the person becomes 40 or 50 or 60.
还有一种人非常的焦虑，就是做内容的人，包括像您这样写书的人啊，也是有两个策略。一个策略说，既然有了人工智能，我们就大量的去复制，每天用人工智能生产大量的短视频，大量的文章在网上去投放。我最近看到一家内容公司给出来的稿费水准，是一篇文章给4块钱人民币，因为他假设你一天可以生产100、200篇这样的文章，这是一个策略。比如说咱俩今天在这采访，有的人说何必你们俩见面呢？2个数字人往这一拼就可以，我们没必要真实的人坐在这儿。这是一派观点。还有一派观点认为呢，哪儿过度供给，哪儿价值就不稀缺，它就没有用。所以我们恰恰应该更多的是真人，真人思考、真人书写、真人表达、真人交流，这个会越来越有价值。所以你给我们所有做内容的人的建议是什么呢？是大规模的去生产那些东西， 用人工智能工具，还是坚守真人的思考、交流和表达？
Again, the big question is what can humans, content providers, still bring to the table? We cannot compete with AI on quantity, that's for sure. We cannot compete also in the ability to consume and analyze enormous amounts of data. So for the present moment, what we can bring to the table is really only our humanity, our ability to feel things, our life experiences. This is something that AI doesn't have. And because as we discussed earlier, it still has no consciousness, no feelings. So everything it knows about feelings comes from what we tell it. We are still the only ones that can make new discoveries about that. If you think about other things in the universe, about diseases, about atoms, about physics and chemistry, their AI will very soon be much, much better than us. It will be very difficult for humans to still make important discoveries in physics or chemistry, let's say in 20 years, because AI will just be so much better. But when it comes to the human experience, to feelings, to emotions, to relationships, here we still have an advantage as long as AIs don't have any feelings, any consciousness of itself.
我和我的同事做了一个产品，过去呢就是比如说你的书出来了，我们会用20分钟到半个小时时间，我们自己写稿子，然后讲给我们的用户听。赫拉利这本《智人之上》，他大概说了什么，给大家提供这样的知识服务。如果你有兴趣，你去买他的书，这是我们过去的一个业务。那现在有人就告诉我们说，这个事儿你们做不了了，因为有人工智能啊。那你能给我们的同事一些建议吗？就是他们接下来会做什么，仍然会有价值。
First of all, I agree that this specific product, it's no longer viable for human beings. To briefly summarize a book in 30 minutes or in 3 minutes, AI is now so much better. I mean, when I try to summarize a book, I can offer basically one summary. But with an AI, you can give it exact instructions, like, I want you to summarize Nexus in exactly 6.5 minutes, and do it in a language which is applicable for somebody who is 14 years old. You can be so specific, and the AI will give you this summary. And then you tell it, okay, now do it 12 minutes for somebody who is 70, it will do it 12 minutes for somebody who is 70. So here I don't think that humans can compete. Again, this is going back to the thing that something that involves only intellectual abilities, we have no chance of competing with AI. If the task is simply to take data, to take words and process them, and the product is more words, like you take a book, you analyze it, and then you produce a 5-minute summary, we have no chance of competing with AI on that.
那我们应该转型做哪些呢？比如说，仍然是给人做知识服务，有没有机会做点别的什么事儿呢？在你看来？
So again, if taking again this example of a book, you can tell readers or audience what you felt when reading the book. And this is something AI cannot compete with you right now because it has no feelings. So we again and again come back to the same conclusion that the key distinction is between intelligence and consciousness. And in intelligence, we cannot compete with AI. It is going to be far more intelligent than us. But in consciousness, at least for now, we have the advantage because AI has no consciousness.
我突发奇想，我接受你这个建议。过几天等咱们这个采访的片子剪出来，我准备做一场直播。你要给我的用户带一句什么话？他为什么要买赫拉利出的这4本书？你给我一个理由。
I think that together, the 4 books give you a very, very big picture of humanity, of our history, from the Stone Age to the AI revolution. And the books are not separate, but they reinforce one another. If you understand our history, it makes it much easier to understand what is happening right now and what might happen in the future. And I don't see history as just the study of the past. I understand history as the study of change. If we understand how things changed in the past, it gives us insight into how things are changing right now because you understand the mechanism of change.
今天耽误你这么长时间，我受到了很多启发，感谢你接受我们的访问，谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you. 谢谢。